Hi, everybody. Welcome again to this Spark Change broadcast, where we hope to connect, inform, and inspire you to create positive change in your life and in your community. If you are watching during this live stream, say hello in the chat. If you have questions, please put those in the chat as we'll try to answer those after the presentation. So, on this broadcast, I would like to introduce you to Mari McHenry. I'm going to take down
Well,
this picture of Angola. Hello, how are you?
good morning, Maria.
Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, it's kind of, is there anything that you'd like to say before we get to your presentation?
I'm just excited to be here.
I am too. I really appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to do this and follow me on this journey of spark change. So, whenever you're ready to start, we can do that. Let me know.
Okay, sounds good.
Are you ready?
I am.
Okay.
Okay、皆さんおはようございます。今日は、少し日本語で話すことになるんですけれども、初めから医療の公平性っていうプログラムをしたいと思います。それで、これはキャメロンホスピタルの写真を、見えていると思いますが、こちらは、例えば自分がペイシェントで、何かのアポイントメントがあれば、カルテ記入フォームっていう、資料を書かなければいけないのです。それは、もちろん自分の、今日の日にち、自分の名字、名前、ジェンダー、誕生日、携帯電話、住所、現在の気持ち、それで熱があるかどうか、病気の歴史、それで、どういう薬を取っているか、その上にアレルギーの情報を書かなければいけないのです。わかりますか？これを一応ペーシェントのように書いてください。どうですか？So, good morning, everyone. My name is Mari McHenry, as Maria had shared. And just wanted to see if you guys are awake and wondering what is going on at this time. Is there something happening in the session? Why am I not understanding? And this tiny little exercise was just sharing or giving you a feeling of what it may feel like when you are a marginalized part of the population, right? It can make somebody feel so nervous when they don't necessarily look, hear, or present like the rest of the majority. What you saw in front of you was simply a registration form, and that information was that date, your name, gender, birth date, cell phone number, address, your medical history, allergies, etc. Something that you would know so quickly when you are working with the ladies at the registrar, the gentlemen at the registrars within the hospital. Yet, if you have a limited English proficiency situation, or in this situation for you, vice versa, limited Japanese proficiency, what does that look like for you? Because the characters are completely different, right? How could I even respond to them with basic information if I cannot communicate with the person that's in front of me? And so that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about, making sure that we're able to um, have all members of our community feel like they are a part of this county, a part of the community in which we live in. Again, my name is Mari McHenry. I am the Director of Health Equity at Cameron Memorial Community Hospital. Very new to the field of healthcare, to be honest with you. I've been in this position for a little less than a year. I focused on higher education and the international student population, student and scholar population for about 15 years, working at Georgetown University for 2 years and then at Trine University for the majority of my career, just down the road from Cameron Hospital. So we've got a great partnership with them. And with that, I worked with a number of cultures. I would say on the conservative side, probably over 100 different cultures, as well as subpopulations within the university systems. And with that said, a lot of people talk about cultural competency during these times. We'll get into that a little bit later, but I will share with you that rather than being culturally competent, it is cultural humility that I would like to encourage you to consider. Now, going into the healthcare field, I think that this is actually pertinent to any industry, but I want to share with you what health equity means in comparison to health equality. And I have this image up here from the Center of Medicaid and Medicare Services, and I have a definition from them as well as to what health equity means. And that is the attainment of the highest level for all people, where everyone has a fair and just opportunity to attain their optimal health, regardless of their race, ethnicity, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, socioeconomic status, geography, age, preferred language, like we just experienced a minute ago, or other factors that affect access to care and health outcomes. So you see in the top image that everybody has the same exact bicycle. And there is only one person that looks like she is able to use it comfortably. The child on the very right is much too small for it. The gentleman to the right from the very left is much too tall. And the woman on the far left cannot even utilize it because she's wheelchair bound. So take a look at the image below where everybody is met where they're at. Now the child has a bicycle that fits him. The gentleman has a bicycle that's much larger and that will fit him comfortably. And the woman who was wheelchair bound can now use her hands for her to move forward along with her team. Now, in this role, going into healthcare and getting into diversity discussions with my colleagues, I have asked people, why have you gone into healthcare? What is your reason? And have done a little bit of research as to why people have gone into healthcare. And it says that almost 90% of the people who go into healthcare go because they want to help people, regardless of who they are, right? They want to make an impact on people's lives. Yet, even with this type of response to nearly 100%, right? 90% is a significant amount. For whatever reason, disparities still exist within the hospital systems. It still exists within our community, within our region, within our state, and within our nation. Really within our world, right? It happens everywhere. I want to share with you a couple of slides that show statistics from a critical access hospital convening meeting that I participated in last October. And here you will see the infant mortality rates between the state of Indiana as well as the national average. And you see the state of Indiana, that teal color is actually higher than the national average when it comes to infant mortality rates. I was quite struck by this. The second slide shows the stats for the infant mortality rates by race and ethnicity within the state of Indiana. Now take a look at these lines. The teal is the non-Hispanic white. The red-orange is the state average of Indiana. The green is the Hispanic Latino community. And the yellow is the non-Hispanic Black community. Look at these numbers. This is a significant disparity, twice, if not three times the number when it comes to infant mortality rates within our state. I also want to read a small clip of a newspaper article that is called Suicide Silent Pandemic. This was also published in the month of October for 2023 in the Herald Republican. And the article states that according to the Kaiser Family Foundation, Suicide deaths have increased fastest among the people of color, younger individuals, and people who live in rural areas. This claim is backed by the data from the 2021 IYI study, which found that 66.1 of multiracial Hoosier students had seriously considered suicide attempt, which is more than twice the rate of the general student population. Also, the LGBTQ plus students were found to have a high rate of suicidal ideation, with 65% of all students that identify in this community in the state of Indiana reporting a serious consideration of suicide. This, my friends, is a high number, and so is what we see on the screen. And it is because of these types of disparities and issues that we have among vulnerable populations that leaders have had to come together and say, what are we doing wrong and how do we go about addressing this? So in 2010, leaders had gone to the table to say, what can we do to best figure out how to make sure that everyone feels safe within the hospital system minimum, right? We want to consider this for the entire community within Angola, within Steuben County, the region, the state of Indiana, et cetera. But focusing on healthcare, leaders got together and finally formalized Section 1557, which is a non-discrimination law under the Affordable Care Act that prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, age, or disability within the healthcare systems. And really, this should be for any industry. This should be for our schools. This should be for our workplaces. This should be for our community as a whole. Same goes with the patient population that our hospitals must serve. And that is everyone under the sun. That is the infants, and that is the geriatric population or our elderly population. That is the Black, brown, and white. That is the Christian faith, and that is the Hindi faith. It is whatever religion that is within our community, right? It is the Lakers that are amongst us during the summer, starting probably next week after Memorial Day weekend, who are perhaps multimillionaires. And it is also the homeless. It is those who are brilliant that study at Trine University just down the road, and they are those who are illiterate. Those who are obese and those who are anorexic, those who are filled with joy. And I would add that Pastor Nikki Shaw, who had spoken just earlier, is probably one of the most joyful people that I know in our community. And it is also those who are depressed. We serve everyone, and that needs to be not just the hospital, but it is all entities and all organizations and faith centers that exist in our community that should be considering this and that perhaps consider this always, right? Um, One of the things that our vulnerable populations struggle with is mistrust in the community, and it is especially if they are a part of a marginalized population. And this is not uncommon for a person or a family of a non-dominant community to have mistrust or trust issues with a population that is of another majority. And this is to include the hospital system. And it's due to the fact of past experiences of unfair treatment or their fear of putting their own circumstance into the hands of a dominant population, which they may see as harmful or at least perceived as not necessarily caring for the other or the marginalized or not who they consider as us. Perhaps you have heard of the term power distance. Simply put, you're working in a setting that defines the actions and the behaviors that exist between individuals where one has a superior position over the other. What are ways that you see a power difference? At the hospital, it can be between a physician and a nurse. It can be the difference between colors of scrubs that people wear, and or the department that they work in. So I see names that are here. June Julian, thank you. Jeanette, I'm so glad that you're here. John in Angola. What are the power differences that you have experienced? Share in the chat for me. What it may be that you have experienced or what you have seen within the community that has been a struggle when it comes to power difference. And as you share that, I will also share that because of the power difference between what it could be for age, race, and ethnicity, et cetera, we have had medical mistrust, at least within the hospital system, that has people hesitate to go to preventative care. They hesitate to perhaps even go to prenatal care, which is perhaps why we have the significant numbers of infant mortality rates within the state of Indiana, as well as other states as well. And we saw during COVID-19 that vaccinations were not something that people of color were keen on participating in. And that is perhaps because of negative experiences that they had in the past, whether it was their generation or generations previous to them. And even during medical discharge, because of an appointment or having to go to the hospital regardless, do they actually participate or follow through the instructions of their physician's discharge instructions? And if they don't, what we need to consider within the hospital system and the other non-for-profit organizations that help with healthcare is why are they not trusting? Are we looking into and researching the communities outside of the dominant community? And are we looking into them as an individual when we do the prescriptions and we do the diagnoses? It's very important for us to always consider the participation of the decision making when we're working with our community members, even when it comes to outside of healthcare. And in order to build that bridge, right, that trusting relationship with our marginalized populations, what do we want to do? It's something as easily as setting up a welcoming environment, setting the tone for inclusion, right? Always making sure that we have clear communication with those we are working with and having transparency. And when I say transparency, I'm saying that we're communicating with, at least in healthcare, the patient that we're working in front of, right? Or in my previous position, working with a university student. But if I'm also speaking with a colleague alongside of me, this communication here must align with the communication that I'm having with the consumer that I'm working with so that they feel safe that we are for them and not against them, right? And of course, attending to any type of barrier that exists. Is it a cultural barrier? Is it a language barrier? Is it a disability situation that we need to be cognizant of? And how do we approach that to make sure that our patients do feel safe or our community members feel safe working with community leaders and influencers that live in the Steuben County area? Now, I understand that there are speakers involved coming from also the Fort Wayne area as well as Indianapolis. So really, this is a Hoosier conversation that we are having with those who are participating. Earlier, I spoke about the need for having the sense of cultural humility and understanding that our own perspective and our own cultural lens is not necessarily the only cultural lens that exists, right? And so when we work with our community members and we get to know other people who live in our neighborhoods, get to know the colleagues that are newly beginning to work in our various organizations and our companies, it is so important for us to be open minded, to hear their story and actively listen to ensure that we know what their background is and to appreciate that background. And if it is significantly different from what we know, then we have to learn how to be flexible and to adapt to the approach that we want to have and what we want to consider when working with our new community members that are from different backgrounds. And really just to be simply culturally curious, to ask questions so that we can more understand about that background and tradition and the values that they have, of course, in a respective and non-intrusive manner. Um, I often share with my colleagues, because we are human, it is going to be normal for us to make a mistake and to slip in something that we say or something that we do. So it is, of course, a part of the most important part of the healing process is to apologize if we know that we have offended somebody. But after that is addressed and hopefully that trust is being built back, making sure that we do a little bit of self-reflection to make sure that we don't offend that person or that community when working with them again or working with somebody who is different is also very important as we are looking into working with a more diverse community within Angola, Steuben County, Northeast Indiana, and the state of Indiana. And I will share this as I remember to share it now. And that is um, that the population in the state of Indiana is declining, right? We are not having enough children for us to sustain the population within the Hoosier state, especially amongst the dominant population. And so, my understanding for those who are working in economic development is in order to sustain the population within the state of Indiana, we have to bring in people from outside of the state. We have to potentially bring in and welcome people from outside of the country. If that is the case, there are going to be differences. And as long as we are able to welcome those differences and work with them, then perhaps they would be willing to stay with us and to also consider themselves a member of our Hoosier community, right? Now, when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, often people will talk about race and ethnicity. That's probably the most prevalent, and perhaps even religion, right? But in the healthcare field, what we have focused on for the past 3+ years is social determinants of health, where people work, eat, work, live, and play, right? And social determinants actually drives over 80% of a person's health outcome. You see the icons here at the top, and the stethoscope, which is where we're considering healthcare, is only 20% of what drives a person's health outcome. The rest is where people live, where they eat, the quality of the water they have, the access to transportation that they have, the access to education that they have, and the quality of air. All of this folds into the quality of life that we have as individuals and community members, right? And I will insert that childcare is a part of this because Indiana is a childcare desert. My understanding, I just found this out, that we are I believe either the fourth or the sixth. I think we are the sixth country in the nation that is considered a child care desert, that we don't have early learning, that one gives our kindergartners readiness, education readiness, and also an issue with our parents that are figuring out the dynamics of who is going to be working when the other is taking care of their child at home between ages 0 and 5. My understanding from a community meeting, at least in Steuben County, is that at least a few months ago, 1,300 positions were open within our county. And according to the Northeast Indiana Early Learning Coalition, we have found that 2,244 children within the ages of 0 and 5 in Steuben County exist. And about 1,500 of those actually may need early learning or childcare so that the parents can work. 79% of those who responded within a child care challenge survey shared that they had to make critical employment decisions due to child care issues. And what did that look like? A parent moving to a different shift. I would suspect that some of this has to do with healthcare, but also the factories and the warehouses that exist within our community, right? That are definitely necessary for operations to happen within those organizations as well as within our county and our state. They have also sought out additional employment, perhaps because one parent has stayed home, the other parent is working either 2 or 3 different jobs to make sure that they have the income that is necessary for the quality of themselves as well as the future of their children. They have also declined a new job offer because they could not have it due to an early education or lack of child care services, and perhaps even declined a promotion because of this situation, which is very unfortunate. So, for those of you who are leaders within the community or have weight to local leaders, be thinking about the fact that childcare is not just a family situation, it is not just an employer situation. This is a community situation that needs to be considered by our leaders that have a voice to legislation. I also want to talk about unconscious bias. And this is because often, especially in a conservative community, we all believe that we are kind and that we show loving kindness to our community. But because we don't know a person's historical disposition, sometimes our brains tend to think stories when we meet somebody who is from a different culture or from a different background that we're not necessarily used to. And so it lets us understand that our brain thinks, okay, they are not the norm. And because of mental survival, our brains want to conserve energy, right? As much as it possibly can. So when we see a difference, within milliseconds, we are thinking fight or flight. We are thinking, is this person safe or is this person not safe? Are they a friend or are they a foe? And so the brain quickly gives us memories that are recycled from past experiences, whether it's the news, whether it's something that we heard about, or that we read in the newspaper, or conversations that we've had in the community. And these thoughts are validated through what we see and hear consistently. So, as we know, especially when it comes to social media, our phone devices show us what we want to see. And we actually go to what we want to see as well, because it's in our nature to gravitate towards what we're used to. This means that sometimes we're not able to challenge our own thoughts and we're not able to challenge our own beliefs. And that's not to say that our own thoughts are not invalid, right? But it would behoove us to consider, again, that our lens is not the only one that exists, and that it's okay to challenge different perspectives once in a while to learn about the other communities that are around us and the other individuals that are around us, not by reading the news that is created by our population, but really going to the community members that are within our own neighborhoods and breaking bread with them, having conversation with them, seeing them as a human being and not necessarily as the other. Think about it this way. Sometimes we get so busy, especially if you are a parent, right? we're going to our respective responsibilities within our jobs, and then we're doing logistics to make sure that our kids are doing all the things outside of school, whether it's in marching band or extracurricular sports, etc. So we do these logistics, and because we're taking so much time with that, we're getting home at a time that only allows for our kids to do their homework and being able to study for their tests. What does that mean when it comes to meals? Sometimes we're going to get fast food. Sometimes we're putting something quickly in the microwave, and we're getting frozen food, and maybe something as simple as a Lunchable when it comes to our younger ones, right? And this is for a quick fill for our bodies. But if we continue to feed ourselves with non nutritious food, when yes, our other food that is created from scratch takes time, but we're going just for the quick fill, we find ourselves malnourished in the long run. And the consequences to that for our bodies can be devastating, perhaps in ways that take a lifetime to be able to recover. And that also goes with our minds. If we continue to feed ourselves with recycled, quick thoughts that validate our thoughts time and time again of ideologies that already are within our community, then that means that we're not learning more, and we're giving our children the same thoughts and ideologies that go from generation to generation. And the malnutrition that happens within the mind can be just as cancerous as the malnutrition that we give our bodies. This not only impacts your way of thinking as an individual, but those also that you influence as community leaders. And it continues to be the norm within our community. And that's perhaps why we still have the division that we do within our region, within our state, and within our nation. So, where am I going with this? I'm saying that we need to interrupt the quick biased thoughts that we have in our brains that quickly just recycle once again. And we need to allow our brains to exercise the access of higher order thinking, investigating, and making sure that we're able to look into and delving into deeper ideas and thoughts that are just as valuable as our own. When we make assumptions, ladies and gentlemen, we are not affording our colleagues and our community members the dignity and the respect that they deserve. It turns into an us versus them. When we label somebody as them, do you know that we are dehumanizing them right then and there? We think of them as other, and I have kind of heard this as a verb now. We have othered those who are not a part of our inner circles, and that immediately distance ourselves from them, which means that we tend to think of negative things. If they are the other, that's not necessarily a positive thing, right? And that validates negative feelings or historical backgrounds that we have or may have experienced or thought in the past. So, what we need to do is train the brain once again to access the higher order of thinking. The more we train it to do so, the more that we are able to have that as a part of our operating system. It's kind of like exercising and dieting, right? It's not going to be a one time fix all, it's a daily routine that has to happen in order for us to be able to expand our horizons and to appreciate the beautiful community that is diversifying our county, our region, and our nation. A couple of employers that we have here in Steuben County have a diverse group of people, and that is Cardinal IG and Miller Poultry. I've had the privilege of meeting with the HR departments for both of these organizations, and can tell that they love all of their employees. At Miller Poultry, they have about 1,300 employees. And my understanding is that, give or take, they have about 900 Hispanic Latino employees. They have almost 100 Burmese employees. So that can give you an idea. And there's also the Amish population, Hispanic population, Arabic speaking population, et cetera, that work in this organization. I have also been told that on the floor, there is not one Caucasian American representative. They will apply for the job and they will take the job, but after 1 to 2 weeks, they will leave the job. Why do you think that is? Think about it. And feel free to share it in the chat. I would be bold enough to say perhaps it's because it's their first time experiencing being the minority, right? Not understanding the languages that are around and feeling different because of the surroundings that they have. At Cardinal IG, I had heard from our executive director of the Steuben County Economic Development that during COVID, they didn't have enough people who were applying for a job for Cardinal to work at Cardinal IG. And so they felt that they had to expand their horizons, and they worked with a variety of agencies to recruit people to come work in Steuben County. And they went as far as recruiting people from Puerto Rico, which is, yes, a part of US territory, but do they speak our language? What is their education like? What is their health system like? And in my mind, I was thinking probably a little bit different. So as they pass the probation period and they're able to welcome their family members to move to Steuben County, how can we help and make sure that these family members can navigate the healthcare system in the Angola area? That is not just the health system and the medical offices that we have within Cameron Hospital, but our community collaborators and the non-for-profits that we trust that they can utilize as well. And this is one of the things that I wanted to share with our HR department. And unfortunately, she shared that although they had hired 130 employees from Puerto Rico, only 30 exist at this time. Now, a lot of it, as many of you know in Steuben County, probably had to do with housing because we do have a bit of a housing crisis here in the Angola area. But I would also suggest that not being plugged in the community with people who look like them, who know how to navigate the resources that are around, probably also had a bit to do with why they either returned home or went to a larger community that may have a better support system that would help them navigate the resources that are available to them, right? And so these are the things that we need to think about as community members and community leaders if we do want to bring other people in outside of the community to be hired. Don't we want them to be contributors of the community, not just coming from Northeast Indiana by driving here, but by living here, by having children here and enrolling them in our school systems? Not just grabbing gas and going back home, but being community leaders within Angola and Steuben County is something that we would want as well. I got this picture from the New York Times, and I thought that it was very telling. This is the flip side of what our subpopulations experience. You see a child there who is looking at a doll that does not look like her. What does she feel like when she's looking at the only options that are given to her? This picture is a little bit more personal. This is a picture of my son's boss who was participating in a basketball camp either last year or the year before. I can't remember when. And her family and friends had apparently said, put him into the private team where he's going to look like the rest of his peers. And my boss was like, no, this one's here in the community. It's free, and it's going to give my son an opportunity to meet people who he may not have the privilege or opportunity of meeting. So she put him in this basketball team. And I'm just imagining how he must have felt in the first week that he went to practice. And really, how my boss and her husband may have felt when they dropped him off and picked him up, not just for their son, but for themselves, navigating the conversations and a hello to the parents that were picking their own children up. Maybe getting a hi and a nod, but not necessarily being invited to Applebee's after a practice or perhaps even a game. These are things that we want to consider too when we see people who are new in our communities, when we see children who are new, if you're picking your children up or dropping them off, whether it's at school or at a sports organization or band or other extracurricular activities that are available in our communities. When you see someone who is not in your inner circle and that you see that it has a beautiful weave into our community, ask them over, invite them to be a part of your community as well, and allow them to share their culture. It is so important for us to make sure that everyone in our community has a sense of belonging. And this is not just up to the hospital because we are, again, are only 20% of an individual's health outcome. But the quality of life is really about community. And I forgot to put this on my slide, but I'm going to show you the character of person, the Chinese character of person. And that is one line over the other. Now, if you see, if this line leaves, then this one would drop. And the same goes for this one. If this one is gone, then this would drop. And that's because biblically, God has said that one should not live alone, right? And so it takes at least two to do life well. Can that be you as a support, right? Even if it's just to smile and say, hello, how are you? And really mean that question, how are you? And be willing to stop and listen to the response that the person gives you. So that perhaps if they're not doing so well, they can also, you can also be a part of making an impact so that it can be better. Um, Thank you so much for your time today. I invite any questions that people may have. Again, I am so new to this role, but I am very passionate about being an advocate for members of our community, especially those in non-dominant populations. And so I welcome any advice that you may have, as well as questions you may have for us to make sure that there is inclusion among our community. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Mari. That was great. There's a great question. I'm going to put that here. What are some small concrete steps that individuals in the community and the community together can implement that would make a difference with this?
That's a really good question. And I would say that if you have children, start with the schools and be a part of the PTO or whatever organizations are involved because we've got to start with the children, right? They need to have a sense of belonging here as well. And I would be remiss to share that I've had relationship or building. I've been building a relationship with our school systems here in Steuben County, and I have learned that with MSD we have 2,900 students within the 6 schools. Right, we've got 4 elementary schools, we've got 1 middle school, and we've got 1 high school. And within those 6 schools, we've got 2,900 students. Now, 443, now give or take perhaps, are Hispanic Latino. To 128 are multi-ethnic, multiracial, which would include my children. 30 are Asian, which is very small when you're talking about 6 schools. And 17 are African American, which is almost half of that population. So imagine you've got one person that looks of one type, right? One subculture, not only within their class, but within their grade and perhaps even within their school. And so my advice would be go into the schools if you're a parent and get to know the parents so that you can see if they are a part of any type of community, and if they don't seem to be a part of a community, help them get plugged in. If you don't have children, I would say go to different not-for-profit organizations to see what exists out there and how they are contributing to the community in various ways. And it can also be as simply as going to your neighbor that you don't know, taking some cookies or some type of baked goods, whatever you're good at, sharing it with them and asking them questions because it is all about the relationship that matters. Great question.
I see there's a lot of comments from people where they've experienced some things as well when they were away outside of the country with no medical knowledge if they'd had needed help. That's something that I think that people experience here if they don't speak the language and they need
Hmm.
medical help pretty urgently.
Yeah.
Um, that can be an issue. And when we're talking about that, mental health and having a representative from your culture, particularly again after COVID, where someone might not understand the challenges that person had particularly had in relation to their culture or their background. I think that those are things that we have to be aware of. That everyone experiences those things differently as well. I mean, do you have any insights on some of that, or have you met some people who have experienced that?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I would share when it comes to the language barriers is that all hospitals have to have free interpretation services, and so Cameron, of course, abides by those policies, and we work with a third party organization to make sure that someone who is medically certified or certified in medical terminology is an interpreter for those respective languages. And that is for free of charge. And sometimes I don't know how often we're able to promote that to help those in our community understand that they don't have to rely on their child who may speak or have a better proficiency in the English language, excuse me, to be able to help them navigate their healthcare situation. When it comes to mental wellness, oh my goodness, I would say, especially for our children within our school systems, I have heard from the Northeast. Oh, I cannot remember the acronym, but basically, it's looking at the vast diversity of the mental wellness for all of our students, and where they fall under the IEP categories, right? And there have been uh, a lot of children who are suffering from mental illness. And I would say that part of that, unfortunately, may be circumstances that are within the home. So, as difficult as it is for our teachers, because what they are charged to do or their responsibility is to teach, right, and to create curriculum, but they are now having to partner more and more in helping the child navigate life. So, once again, I would say that it is a community effort that is necessary in order for our youth to be able to have more stability and a more positive mental wellness being, if you will. It's there's so much that's going on within the home, and it could be perhaps because of the stress of finances, because of lack of childcare once again, that is having difficulty with people trying to not only save money but to really make ends meet, and the children are perhaps feeling the baggage of that. So it really takes a village to make sure that one child is being met, let alone the 2,900 that are within MSD, and the 2,400 that we saw that are within the 0 to 5. So what I would say is that it takes community. And as exhausted as we are with our respective responsibilities at work and with our children, if we do not contribute to our community, then it's going to continue to go that route.
So we've got another question here. Are there ways to get involved in assisting with English as a second language training?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. Please communicate with Impact Institute. They have a great right now they have created a class, an English class for our Hispanic Latino community that is now on Mondays and Wednesdays at the Catholic Church. And they have great numbers right now. All the seats are full. And I believe they are probably looking for other instructors because there is now a waiting list for other people who want to be more proficient in the language. And I believe that this is a huge part of health equity because if you understand the language that you are living in the midst of, then you're going to be more independent and you're going to be able to make better decisions for yourselves and your family. So communicate with Carolyn from Impact Institute. And my gosh, I hope that you guys are able to partner so that we can grow that English class.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the information, and our population here in Steuben County is becoming more diverse. So, and I think that's just a natural progression that we're experiencing.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate the fact that Cameron has created that position and that you're in it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Still green, still feel new, but I love making or helping make small impacts for sure.
And you might have surprised a bunch of people by speaking Japanese.
Yeah, well, that's what I share with registration in the hospital. I present as white, but my mother is Japanese. And so I'll tell you what, other people who are Japanese would probably give me a B minus at best with my speaking abilities. But knowing that I am one of the very few that live within our community, just to make a point of what it feels like to be vulnerable is why I used that. So, どういたしまして。Thank you so much for participating. And see, you probably know whoever is a part of the Steuben County Tourism Bureau. You may know more than I do, so please don't make fun of me.
All right. If you can hang on backstage for a little
Sure.
bit while I wrap this up, and thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for joining. Have a great day.
Okay. Thank you for joining us today. And if you thought this content was useful and you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the Folia Nova YouTube channel. And you can also sign up for updates at the Spark Change website and tell us other topics you'd like discussed for the future. So, with that, let's all work together to make the world a little bit better. Thanks for watching.